In this video, we are going to create another API endpoint that will get us all the data related to all the properties stored in our database and give it back to us as response. So let's go ahead and do that. So it will be a straightforward get endpoint or get, when I say endpoint, means another mapping that we have to do. So let's do that. So we'll say public and then get all properties. So it is going to return all properties. But what we have learned is we will not return only the property, rather we will also return with response entities. So let's create a response entity. So here it will be like this. But before we do that, for now I will just make this as void method to avoid any error. And what we will do is we will say property service dot get all. So we have to now create the same method again, get all properties. So we will go to the service and in the service we will create this method again. So because if you see now what is happening is because this is an interface, by default everything is public abstract, so we will get rid of this. So now we have to say this get all properties. So it will not take any parameter because we are getting all properties, and all properties means we have to return a list of properties. Okay, just import this, hover on top of it and import the java.util. So now we have added in the list. So here if we go to the service IMPL, it will ask us to hover on top of it. It will ask to implement method. Click on it. So now we have added a method. So from here in our controller, we can now call that method. So get all properties. Perfect. And what it is returning us? We just saw that. It is returning us list of properties, get all properties. So take this, we'll say property list. That's it. And now what we have learned, we have to create a response entity. So let's create the response entity. So response entity, this time it will be response entity of what we are going to return, list of property. So copy this, paste it here, and then we'll say response entity equal to new of response entity, and then we have to pass it again. This time in the body we will pass the property list and HTTP status will be OK, 200 OK. That is the part we wanted to do here. Next is we will return this response entity from our method. So it's a response entity. And now we have to take this and put it as a return type instead of void. So this part we have done. So we have done the controller part, which is good. But let's add the get mapping. So we'll say get mapping. And here we have to pass the endpoint. So what is the endpoint we want to keep? We will keep the exact same endpoint and we will not have any problem because the method type is different. Here we have post mapping, here we have get mapping. So there won't be any issue. Let me stop the server. Now in the service IMPL, we have to now call the property repository dot find all. As soon as we do find all, so it is going to the database and it is going to first it's going to go to the repository and it is going to find all. When it does, it means find all this entity because there can be different tables. So it's going to do find all on this because we are calling this repository here. So find all of this property entity. So it is going to return us list of property entity, list of properties. Let's say that way. Now we will see there's an error. So let's say what's the error here. It is returning us an iterable from here. Required type, it says required type list is provided is iterable, it says. So what we have to do, we have to typecast it. We can take this and typecast it to this type. So now we won't get any error. Perfect. But now we are returning a list of properties. So we have to convert it. So what we will do now? We will apply for loop, and I will take help of enhance for loop. So I will say colon this, and on the left side I will keep each entity. So I will say property entity, and I will call the converter. So I will say property converter dot convert. What I am converting? I am converting an entity to DTO. So I will pass the entity, this entity. It will give me a DTO. So let me hold the DTO. So I will say DTO, and now I will create another list to which inside which I have to add the information. So I can say property list prop list equal to new array list, and I will just say prop list dot add. I will add the DTO. So for every entity I'm getting, I'm first converting that entity to DTO and then keeping that DTO in this list. And at the end, I will return this list. Alright, so now we also completed our this layer, service layer. So service layer is calling the repository layer. It is giving the data. We are converting. We are returning the list from the service layer. And now we are this data is going to get returned to the controller layer. So let's this layer the data is returned. So let's start our server and test it out. So now we will go to our Postman, and then we will take the exact same URL, but this time it will be a GET request. So I will go here and paste it here, and then I don't have to pass anything because I'm not passing, and I will hit this. So there you see, we have all the properties. This is one property, this is another property, this is another property, and we are getting also 200 OK. So what just happened is when we asked our from our client Postman, we asked the controller give me all properties. So it went to service and it asked okay, give all the properties. Then from here the service it went to the repository to ask all the properties. From the repository it went to the database. Database return all the list of properties entity. Then we got all the list of property entity, so we passed it to the converter. Converter converted the list of property entity to list of property DTO. So and that was in the service, and then list of property DTO was returned to the controller, and in the controller we converted this list of property DTO along with the status into a response entity which we returned back to the Postman as JSON response, which was this one in the controller. This was the JSON response with response entity and status. and that's what we see. So our Java data, which was the list of property, automatically got converted to JSON data as response. This what we see is JSON. This one JavaScript object notation. This is another. So who converted it? Again, Spring Boot did it for us. It converted the Java list into JSON array, and here it was converting the JSON array to Java object. JSON object to Java object. Similarly, a JSON array can be converted to Java object. So all this conversion from JSON to Java and Java to JSON is being done by Spring Boot with the help of its Jackson bind annotation and that kind of API it's using internally, which this input, this mapping that we are doing annotation, these are taking care of this. So this is it for this video. I will see you in the next video. Thank you.